I thank Mr. President, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, and the organizers of this year's Democracy Day for inviting me and giving me opportunity to speak. For me, it's a very rare privilege which I will treasure. We've come together here at the State House Conference Center to reflect on the theme, consolidating on the gains of Nigeria's democracy, necessity of enduring reforms. The theme speaks to the heart of where we are as a democratic nation and reminds us of what must be done to consolidate and safeguard the gains of the democratic journey we have traveled. In essence, we are here to commemorate Democracy Day, which is celebrated on June 12th every year. I'm therefore privileged to be invited to speak on democracy and the rule of law, lessons from June 12th, which is deeply situated within the theme. I think this conversation is very necessary on a day like this to keep the profound lessons of June 12th alive and serve as a political compass for the future. The date June 12th does not appear in our calendar by accident. It earned its place through pain, through sacrifice, and collective resolve. It represents a point in our national journey when the people made a clear choice and the system responded in disagreement. In recognizing June 12th, the APC-led government did more than declare a public holiday. It corrected the record. It restored the name of Chief MKO Abiola to its rightful place in our political and democratic history. The action also gave deserved recognition to a generation of activists, a generation of journalists, exiles, and more importantly, our voters who waited too long for the truth to prevail. Abiola died in custody. His wife, Kudirat, was assassinated. Many others were detained or forced into exile, while some simply disappeared. Yet, even under repression, the demand for justice continued. The democracy we practice today did not come through gradual reform. It arrived through resistance, through pressure and perseverance from fellow patriots who put their lives on the line for democracy to thrive. We owe a debt of gratitude to those who stood firm and spoke out when it was easier and safer to stay quiet. Their resilience created the space we now occupy. Their example still speaks to us because democracy is always a work in progress. It is either deepened or diminished. It expands with vigilance and fades with neglect. Let us take a moment to reflect on what democracy actually involves. Essentially, it is a system where the people, through periodic elections, shape leadership and guide national direction. It draws its legitimacy from elections, but its stability depends on public vigilance, the active participation of the people, and the media in the governance process. In this framework, the rule of law is not an accessory, it is the spine. It is indeed the oxygen of democracy. It ensures that decisions follow procedures and that authority submits to standards and that every citizen, regardless of your office, origin, or lives under the same code. The principle does not fluctuate with circumstance. It holds steady even when the terrain is unsuitable. On the other hand, the judiciary, the bastion of democracy, stands firmly in defense of citizens, the citizens' rights, and also guides against the abuse of power. The events of 1993 tested that principle. The judiciary came under strain. Court orders clashed. Legal clarity gave way to confusion. Judges faced pressures that blurred the lines between duty and fear. While some showed restraint, the system struggled to offer the firmness that the moment demanded. The media stepped in. Nigeria's press house, large and small, refused to be muzzled. Journalists operated from endangered houses. Editors published under threat. Headlines became acts of defiance. Their courage helped keep the facts breathing. Their refusal to retreat emboldened the ranks of democratic activists. Yes, civil societies filled another gap. Activists, students, professionals, and religious leaders rallied in towns and across borders. They mobilized opinion, raised funds, and maintained pressure on the regime. Some were arrested, some fled, yet the core of the movement endured. It adapted to crackdowns and built solidarity networks beyond our borders. The political class responded unevenly. Some chose self-preservation. Others pursued appointments from the same regime that annulled the elections. This fracture weakened the pushback and delayed progress. But amid that uncertainty, a few voices kept the hope alive. One of those voices now gallantly leads the nation, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR. He was part of the resistance. At a time when alignment offered safety, he chose exile and advocacy. Today, he governs a country he once fought to free. That act from dissident to president says something about the endurance of conviction. Now let's consider the electoral body that conducted the historic vote under Professor Humphrey Mosu. The National Electoral Commission operated professionally, even as court injunctions swirled around them. The results were already being released when the hammer fell on them. The military intervened and the process stopped midstream. But the Commission's conduct gave us a glimpse of what an impartial, well-run election could look like. It also demonstrated that it is possible to conduct a free, fair, and credible elections in our climate. Our task now is to move from glimpses to guarantees. That means strengthening the independent National Electoral Commission, shielding it from manipulation, and ensuring that those who lead it are choosing from their integrity. Without a credible umpire, even the best voter turnout must yield controversy. There are also lessons to be learned from the structure of political leadership. Ideological clarity was absent in the aftermath of June 12. Instead of aligning around shared beliefs, parties often collapse into alliances of convenience. That weakness allowed the annulment to be rationalized by some people, while some people also ignored the result, the consequence of the annulment. If the political class had stood together, history might have taken a different course. We cannot undo the past, but we can learn from it. Political parties today must move beyond personalities. They must articulate values. They must train successors, and they must compete on policy, not slogans. That is how voters learn to make informed choices. And it is how governments become accountable after elections. Let me also speak about civic responsibilities. Democracy does not rely on institutions alone. It requires the active participation of citizens, people who will vote, people who ask questions, people who write and engage. When citizens withdraw, bad actors advance. When people participate, systems adjust. Young Nigerians must see themselves as part of this system. They must see themselves as participants, not mere spectators. You inherited the rights earned in 1993. You must also inherit the responsibilities therein. Change comes from active participation, not docility. There is also the matter of political will. No constitution, no matter how perfect, can enforce itself. No system, however well designed, can resist manipulation without principled actors. At critical moments, leaders must choose direction. Not every choice will be popular, but it must always be defensible in terms of public interest and national stability. We have had that kind of leadership now. We have this leadership under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFR, one that understands the difference between strength and stubbornness, one that can hold institutions accountable without weakening them, one that listens, not just reacts, one that is answerable to the people in visible and measurable ways. That is the spirit behind the Renewed Hope agenda. The removal of fuel subsidies, though challenging, has opened up competition in the downstream sector, helping to stabilize prices and redirect public funds towards infrastructure and education. The Nigerian Education Loan Fund is widening access to higher learning, ensuring that no willing student is denied opportunity because of poverty. The Electricity Reform Act is no longer an abstract policy. The decentralization of the power market is already enabling, and 24-hour supply is becoming realistic in some parts of the country. These efforts are the signs of a government serious about translating governance into real outcomes, where progress can be seen, felt, and sustained. That deserves our support and encouragement. As we commemorate June 12, let us not reduce it to mere history. What is possible is that when Nigerians decide, people should support and follow. It shows the limits of coercion, and it also exposes the gaps in our structure which must be closed. Today, the road ahead requires commitment. Institutions must be built to survive transitions. Political actors must agree on basic rules. The press must remain independent. The courts must act without fear. And citizens must stay involved beyond election day. This is how democracy becomes routine. not in ceremony, but in culture, not in grand declarations, but in consistent practice. The work is not over yet, but we are not starting from scratch either. We carry the lessons of June 12. Let's honor those lessons, not in abstract terms, but in how we govern, how we vote, and how we defend our democracy and institutions. For me, one of the lessons from June 12 that must keep aflame in our hearts is this: the supreme will of the people, expressly expressed through the ballots, will always prevail. All over history, the evidence is there that the will of the people can only be delayed, but not denied. I want to thank you for listening, and I want to also crave your indulgence to inform you that I spend not only my time, but the time of other governors who are not here. May God bless all of us.